Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, we were having a good laugh right before we jumped on here. Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
James, Brendan, always good to be with you. The show before the show, always my favorite part of these things. Maybe we'll have to reveal some of these conversations in an upcoming happy hour. You know,
I don't know if that's going to be street legal. And of course, joining us as well is Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brendon, what's going on?
Not too much. They feel happy hour appropriate. I think that's a decent setting to share stories.
To reveal what we're talking about. That would be a fun segment on the happy hour. Well, let's start there. We're going to have a happy hour.
Right. Oh, you want to? Oh, okay, that part. Okay,
no.
Okay.
Hold off. No, we're not talking about any of that stuff. So we will have a happy hour on Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30. What is that? It's August something. I don't know. I don't know what day of the week it is most of the time.
Next Thursday would be the 3rd.
Okay, so August 3rd, we will have a happy hour from 5:30 to 7:30. That is, of course, for premium subscribers to the Kings Beat. I do not have a guest to announce yet, but I will announce a guest between now and Monday. And we'll have that. I'll send out an email and just remind everybody that the happy hour is happening this week. So jump on board, go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. Even if you just want to try it out, it's very affordable to drop in. And it's shorter than Oppenheimer. The Kings Beat podcast, the happy hour will be shorter than the 3 hours that I'm sure all of you, and about I don't know, more than half price. So it'll get you in the door with all of our premium content here at the Kings Beat.
What a fantastic movie, by the way. I hope Brendan goes to see it because
that's going to take me like 4 different sessions.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
My son saw it and was just like, that's one of the best movies he's ever seen.
Yeah, man. So, it was really good.
Yeah.
Can I look at Steven. So the Steven Castaneda in the chat here. I saw him right after the premiere. We were at opening night of Oppenheimer at Doco. Doco and Oppenheimer almost threw me right there. So it was like a tongue twister for me.
All right.
But I wonder if Steven can concur that theater was about as hot as balls. It was unbelievably warm watching that movie. God, I was sweaty coming out of that. And
did it add to the intensity of the movie? You're like, oh, this kind of did.
I was literally blowing on my arms to cool off, and I was with a few friends and to see the movie, and it was
You're like, Sean,
great.
What are you doing?
I know it was. I have many rants stored up in me, so I hope you're all ready because it feels like it's been some time since we've last gathered, and this is going to be some therapy for me.
Okay. All right. That's good. Have you, I did go see Barbie with the wife. I enjoyed it. I thought it's getting great reviews. So I'm like, hey, why not? It definitely has some, like some points, some things that I didn't think were great, but overall I like fully enjoyed it. Like
shout out Greta Gerwig, Sacramento's own, the director of that movie. And I think she wrote it too. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And Margot Robbie is, I think she was supposed to be like the producer of it, and then ended up being Barbie. Her intent was not to be Barbie originally. It was supposed to be Gal Gadot, but she had some other situation and couldn't.
I think they got the casting right.
I like the casting for the whole thing was pretty hilarious. There's a scene with the Kens that is just off the charts ridiculous.
Sounds about right.
So, yeah, it's ridiculous. So it definitely had some moments. We're doing movie talk here for the first couple of minutes of the Kings Beat podcast.
My specialty.
Yeah.
Brendan, your thoughts?
That Margot Robbie is a phenomenal actor.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Actress.
Okay. Having said that, how many films of hers have you seen? Because I feel like in your case, it's probably just a few
Wolf
scenes.
on Wall Street, and maybe that's it.
Did you watch the whole movie?
I watched the whole movie. The whole movie.
He didn't
relax.
He didn't watch the first minute and a half on loop. That's not what he did. Yeah, good for Brendan.
I can't think of another movie though. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I gotta admit, I miss Brenden after spending like a week with him in Vegas. I'm sure he misses me. It was it's good
maybe
times.
a little bit.
Yeah. Someone's asking, Jim is saying who played Ken. It is
Ryan Gosling, right?
Gosling. Yeah, Ryan Gosling. Yeah. But there's multiple Kens. So
Say what?
Well, they're in Barbie
Is this like
worlds.
the Spider-Verse where there's like multiple Spider-Men?
No, it's the Barbie-verse. Like there's only Kens were packed. Well, there's also Alan, and then there's one other. I think there's only one other male. Oh no, there's two other males get left in the box that were canceled quickly.
What's in the
but
box?
There's also multiple Barbies because you have your standard Barbie, then you have your beach Barbie, and you have your like all those. So yeah, it's complicated.
I feel like I'll see this movie eventually.
I think you will. I mean, it was actually really.
Brenden, want to go?
Sure, Sean. That's the movie we're gonna see.
Yeah, just two dudes. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it'd be great.
That's hilarious. The Barbie-verse. Yeah. Okay. So outside of us watching movies, can you make sure to give us a thumbs up here on the Kings Beat podcast if you don't mind, and subscribe? And you can't. I think I forgot to turn it on again. You probably can make comments even though you're not supposed to be able to unless you're subscribed. That's my bad.
We're feeling nice today, right?
Yeah, we're feeling nice. We're feeling nice.
Do we have candles lit? Do we have the candles lit? Because I got the
damn.
blue lavender breeze.
Blue lavender breeze.
Yeah, it's a good one. Oh my god, it smells so great.
Brenden is currently lighting the candle for those of you who are not watching live.
That's the clearance candle. One wick.
Oh yeah, the clearance candle. The only candle currently.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get to the Sacramento Kings. We got plenty of ground to cover, and we'll be with you for a little while here. We'll field some questions near the end of the show, or if you throw something out in the comment section that we want to discuss, maybe we will. But I think that the first thing is we forgot to discuss this last week. But Keegan Murray has been invited to the select team. Sean brought it up as soon as we ended the show, and somehow we omitted that. This is a huge thing, I think, for Keegan Murray. I think it's sort of like a rite of passage for really high quality young players, and it puts you around some of the best in the game, shows you what their work habits look like, shows you what their leadership skills look like, and you get to also play with the select team. And I don't know, Sean, you've been to this before. Are you going to head down and watch any select practice? Because I don't think I am.
No, it's going to be tough to get down there this time. But yeah, I mean, what an opportunity for him. And knowing that really, I mean, next year is the Olympics. This year's FIBA. FIBA is a great stepping stone for that before you hop into that tournament. And we've seen guys elevate before. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins was the one that kind of came to mind in recent years when you're on the select team and you make it to the national team. Rudy Gay had been a part of the national team. Harrison Barnes has been a part of the national team and Olympic teams. So we saw De'Aaron Fox join Harrison Barnes down there and with Marvin Bagley, and having three down there that 1 year. It was a lot of fun going from Vegas to LA. And that was an Olympic year. And De'Aaron could have probably made that roster if not for some circumstances and off-season plans that he was already committed to. One of which was his best friend's wedding at the time. So I had heard rumblings that he was trying to, maybe get involved again, but ultimately didn't get into the camp for one reason or another. I don't know. I'd like to talk to him about it. But at this point in his career, it's probably best in the rear view for him. But who knows what the future can hold. But for Keegan, being in the pipeline, and that's what they do. I mean, USA Basketball, Nike has a huge, huge influence over the national team as well. So, Coach K is still an ever-present fixture around the team as well, even though he no longer coaches the team, and Greg Popovich is still around. But they like to pull from their own, and they reward loyalty. And we learned that with people like DeMarcus Cousins, who really, really, really wanted to be on that team. So if Keegan Murray, who was young enough and making just significant strides in the international game. And let's face it, his game is almost perfect for what they're looking for this national team. So I think depending upon how that week goes, he could position himself very, very well to be a part of the Olympic team with if he has a great camp, stays healthy this season, and if he shows the commitment to the program, he'll definitely be in consideration for it.
Yeah, and go ahead, Brenden.
I have questions for you guys about this for clarity's sake. So there's the actual roster, right, that has, I believe, 12 players on it currently. And then there's all these select players, which is Keegan, Cade, Jalen Green, Herb Jones, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, and a handful of other guys.
Halliburton, right?
Yeah, well, Halliburton's on the main roster, right?
Might mean national
rather
team.
than the select team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where like Sean saying that if he performs well, he could make his way to the main roster. I guess I didn't even realize that was part of what the select team is. Is these all guys trying to make that main roster, or are some of them there just to get 3 days of work in?
No,
both.
It's complicated. Yeah. I mean, you can actually get elevated from the select team to the main roster right now. Like there's always a possibility, because that's what happened with Marvin. Although he wasn't going to, there was a possibility that he would actually make the Olympic team a few years ago, but he did get elevated from the select team up to the main roster to try out. And then they took that group. So the first couple of days is usually with the select team as like punching bags, right? And then you elevate, they go to another location, and it's mainly just the standard roster. And then if someone gets hurt, you have the select guys who are also able to step in and potentially fill a role. Go ahead.
And one of the cool things about that is, especially this year with FIBA, you can take members of the select team with you to Asia. It's in Philippines, Taiwan, a few other spots that they're doing FIBA at. But you can take them on the trip, and in the event of an injury, have somebody call up in the middle of the FIBA tournament. So there's a lot of possibilities, but more than anything, there's a lot of evaluation that goes on with the select team during that week, where the competition is big. You want to see people's work ethic. You want to see, just like an NBA team, what's your best five look like, all the analytics and numbers that go into it, and you're doing it to skew it towards the international game, which is very, very different from what the people, an NBA fan, might typically see. So a lot of details and evaluation to go, but I think Keegan's going to have an amazing shot to probably latch on to the national team, if not this year, with the possibility of next.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you talk about being a perfect player, first of all, you need as many shooters as possible to play the international game. You also need multi-positional players, and that's something Keegan can play the 3 and the 4. And even in some situations at the international level, he could play the 5. There are situations where that could actually happen. And there's such a versatility to his game that we didn't get to see last year in Sacramento, but you could see him stepping up and showing more of what he can do in a different setting. So they like that type of player. They like the versatility. They like, all of the things that Keegan can bring to the court. And the other thing, I think Keegan has the right temperament and mentality for Team USA. Team USA is about buying in 100%. It's about not worrying about how many points you score or how big your role is. It's about supporting everybody and representing your country the right way. And so I think that he does really fit the mold as a stereotypical, Team USA player that they like to bring in. So
is there any outside of obvious, bad luck with injuries, is in your guys' mind, is there any downside to this? Like, is there any thought of, well, maybe you should take the time off or anything like that?
No, because and here's why. I think someone might hear that, and I think it's a great question, because you'll hear me say that no, Keegan probably shouldn't be playing summer league because it's haphazard basketball. Because it is a more team-oriented game. You have guys who are further along in their careers and more established, and they're coming together not to necessarily make a name for themselves or find where their career is going to take them to or find their next stop or whatever. Like, this is literally the honor of representing your country, and having to just have the experience and be around great players. I mean, it's an all-star team essentially. On the select team, even then, it's a collection of the future of what the game looks like. You've got a ton of young players who are really already established. They're not trying to find like their next NBA home and where they can play. So the basketball is cleaner. It can be physical, and certainly there have been injuries in USA or in USA competition as well as international play, but you've got great care around you all the time. Not that Summer League doesn't, but if anyone watches Summer League, boy, that's some haphazard basketball. It gets a little gnarly out there. The NBA or the international game can be physical, but it's much cleaner.
I totally agree with Sean. I think the biggest issue that you have with Summer League, especially late in Summer League, is you see like the guys who have a real shot at making the team are no longer on the court. And then you have a bunch of guys who are trying to show everybody what they can do. And that trying, they become tryhards. And the game can become very violent out of nowhere and not intentional, but guys just trying to show everything that they have. That's not what you're going to see at the international level. The international level is, mainly made up of like solid veteran European players that are really good. I mean, it's high quality basketball. There are some teams you're going to roll over just because they don't have the talent, but there isn't a rawness to the game that you'll see at like a Summer League. And so I think it's perfect for Keegan to go and get some run. And even if you do have, some minor injury issues, you have time. We still have time, and we'll get to that a little bit later. All of the dates and stuff for training camp have come out, and you're looking at like 2+ months before, anyone is going to go actually have to show up for training camp stuff. So, you roll an ankle or you have like a minor knee issue. There's still plenty of time to work stuff out like that. So where do they they're in Vegas. I don't even know when the dates are. Is it happening right now? Oh, Sean is on mute.
August 3rd to 6th.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
August 3rd to 6th.
That first week. And then he'll actually be back in town. I mean, I guess barring any change to where he ends up on the trip with FIBA, from what I understand, he'll be back in town. Really, I believe the 7th. There's a great golf tournament that he and Malik Monk will be taking part in the Elk Grove area, and I'll have put some information out that on Twitter eventually. But if people want to go check out Keegan Murray or maybe even play in the tournament with him, you can do that.
There you go. Brenden, did you have any other questions on the FIFA and all this?
No other questions. I guess my thoughts on it is that I think it's good for Keegan to be around some of these guys. Like, there's things he can learn from a lot of these different players and coaches, but like, Mikal Bridges is absolutely somebody that Keegan could learn from. Brandon Ingram is absolutely somebody he could learn from. Cam Johnson, been in the league a little bit longer, So I think it's good for him to be around these type of guys and get the chance to continue to expand his game. And, he belongs in those names and feeling that way. So I think that's good. And the one other thing I'll say is that Jordi Fernandez is not going to let this USA team just walk through this. He's running the Canada roster, and they got some good players they're rolling out there. SGA, Jamal Murray, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort. They got Zach Edney from Purdue. RJ Barrett is on there as well. Corey Joseph, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell. There's a lot of NBA guys on that roster that Jordy's going to be coaching.
Yeah, that's deep. That's a deep team. Yeah, I think also to sort of wrap this one up, I think the other thing that Keegan is going to he's going to experience coaching from Steve Kerr and from Mike Krzyzewski and from Greg Popovich and from another, there's an elite group of coaches that are attached to Team USA as well. And it's just getting more and more and more basketball education for him. It'll be like a master's course for a couple of days where he's really taking in a whole lot of information from some of the legends of the game. And, guys, like so many championship rings will be in the room. And that's that's big. It's good for him to get that experience and to learn. And I think we saw De'Aaron Fox, while his experience ended strangely, there was still a ton of things that he took from that. And the same with DeMarcus. But I think with De'Aaron, it was just realistically, he hadn't fully got a commitment to what he was going to be to Team USA. And that was partially on a communication issue. And he wasn't going to leave his life completely for what would have been like 2+ months, because they were first going to Australia for like 16 days. And then they were going to, was it China or was it Japan that year, Sean?
For you're talking about when DeMarcus?
The Olympics. No, for De'Aaron.
Oh, yeah. That was, I mean, it's tough, man. Like during that time, you had the managing director at the time for USA Basketball is Jerry Colangelo, and you have guys like Krzyzewski and Popovich, who you mentioned a minute ago. They're still around, but they don't really have the positions anymore of like putting teams together. They always reward loyalty, and that will continue to be on, but they want to buy in. Like they need an absolute buy-in. And if the littlest thing breaks or wavers and you don't have that commitment, they don't want to bring somebody on who's not 100% committed. And excuse me, it's just unfortunate that at the time there was a lot going on for De'Aaron Fox at the time, and it wasn't in the cards. And to say that he's punished for it isn't necessarily true, but again, you're rewarding others that have the complete buy-in that would make the sacrifice of all their schedule to be a part of it. And you mentioned some of the coaches. For people who don't know, it's like, yes, Steve Kerr is the head coach now. He's with Tyronn Lue, Monty Williams, Mark Few, Eric Spoelstra, and Grant Hill is now the managing director, replacing Jerry Colangelo. So you still have a lot of the same guard overseeing USA Basketball, but it is a little bit different. And, there could be a world where De'Aaron, makes it back at one point or another. I mean, certainly he wouldn't have been the first person that had to, not be all in at the time, take a step back, address some personal things in his life, and then maybe rejoin later on. We've seen that time and time again. And even players who were on the national team now for the Olympics, like if LeBron wanted to join that team again, guess what? LeBron's on that team, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and like we were there when the Fox situation went down. So they played at was it Henry Samueli's building, the Honda Center, down in Anaheim. And they were playing the Spanish national team. And after the game, I think it was assumed that Fox was the backup point guard, and he really didn't get hardly any run at all. And then after the game, they were going to stay the night in LA, and the next day fly to Australia again for like 16 days. But the commitment, it was that they were taking, I think, 14 players for 12 spots, and they hadn't made their final roster cuts. And it was a huge commitment, not knowing if you were going to make the team. And again, Fox had a wedding that was coming up and some other things coming up. And so I understood it, because I felt like he didn't know where his place was with the team. And so he walked away. And I'm sure.
And to that point, decision. James, they could have been much more upfront, but he was making the team. Like they called him and Marvin up, or he was already up on the national roster before they had to whittle it down. And they called him up with purpose. Same thing with Marvin. Marvin probably wouldn't have made the team, but he'd made it to the national level to be able to compete with them. And people I'd talked to, everyone's like, De'Aaron's making the team. They want his speed. They need that point guard. They had people who had bowed out at times. So it was it was there. And to go into LA where they're raving about him to all of a sudden at the last minute, both of them drop out was tough.
Well, remember, Marvin dropped out the week before.
Right. Before LA, correct.
Yeah, before LA. So, yeah, that was interesting times. Me and Sean were in Vegas for a while, and then in LA for a while. It was a complicated situation. So anyway, I think it's a great experience for Keegan Murray, and being young and not having like the ties that like bind you to a situation. Like you can go have these experiences and have your family have some of these experiences, whether he makes a team or not. I still think it's a spectacular overall situation for him. We have the Nerlens Noel situation, which is all of a sudden finally has some clarity. And I want to give the guy credit. The initial guy is, I think it's Anil Gagna. I'm not sure. Gogna on Twitter. And he runs a site called notradeclause.com. And he actually had the numbers for Nerlens before everyone else. They're now on places like Spotrac. And so Nerlens' contract is a 1 year, it's almost 3.2 million bucks. But it's only 300,000 guaranteed for showing up to training camp. If he makes the opening night roster, it's an additional 600,000. And then it comes down to the cut date. The rest of his money would be guaranteed, whether it's somewhere around January 9th, January 10th, depending on what the date is that the NBA sets this season. So Nerlens Noel, again, this is something we kind of talked about last time. It's a non-guaranteed contract. It's sort of a make-good contract. If he looks great in camp and they've got to keep him, they will. If not, 300,000 sounds like a lot of money, but that's what you have to pay for a seasoned veteran big man who may make your roster. Just like the Kings had put pretty solid money on the table for Matthew Dellavedova last season. I think it was 150 if he for going to training camp, and something like 300,000 if he made the team. So any thoughts on that? Because for me, it's a low risk, high reward, like kick the tires on a guy situation.
I think the same. I think it's a smart way to go about it. I mean, this is a guy that played less than 200 minutes last year. I think that hypothetically he has things that he could provide that this team needs, but it is sort of hypothetical right now in my mind. It still needs to be seen. We haven't seen it on the NBA floor for a little while, really, since probably 2020, 21 when he was playing with New York. So it's been a little while. I think it's a smart way to go about it. Obviously, they have other bigs that you would view as depth behind Sabonis now, also with Len and Trey Lyles, if we look at him that way, which is where I'm at. So I think it makes sense. A smart way to go about it for a guy that you don't really know what he's going to look like right now.
Yeah, and as we alluded to last week, I mean, that's, there was reasons why none of us believed that it was a completely guaranteed deal, because in theory, he offers what you might need. In application, it's a completely different ball game. I'm hopeful. I think I'm hopeful to see somebody like him stick, but I don't know that I would bet on it. I mean, it's a he's had a tough go. He's been on a ton of different teams. This is the perfect type of contract to put him on, because you don't want to be left holding the bag if it doesn't work out. So it's very much that NFL like contract. We're going to see a lot more of these in the future. Get through training camp, see how things look. And obviously, as James mentioned, that date in January where it becomes fully guaranteed. So even if he does make the opening day roster, you're rewarding him for that. And if he can do that and then somehow become a semi-rotational player at points where Mike Brown needs to really lean on him at times, we'll get to see what that looks like. But again, being if you're a betting man, I don't know that I would bet on that happening, but it's definitely something that'll, in a couple months, we'll be able to see what it looks like.
Yeah, by the time we get to January, he will have made maybe half of the salary, so like 1.5 million. The Kings are over the cap, so it's not like this is a league minimum contract. It's what they're available to sign right now, and you can open up another roster spot later in the season with him, as long as you waive him before the January 9th deadline or 10th deadline, whatever it is. Then you don't have to continue paying the rest of his salary for the season. Again, that would probably be about.
Oh, I got a frozen ham.
He was about to say something profound.
Oh, I did freeze. I didn't know. No. I just kept going. Okay. I'm here.
Finish that thought, James. Why don't you rewind yourself like 15 seconds of what you said?
Cool. Yeah, I was saying that, like, even if he makes a team, if he gets cut before January 9th or 10th, he still frees up that roster space, and you're only into him for like 1.5, 1.6 million bucks, and not the rest of it. So That to me, that's it's a good idea. Like, I think that's what I'll keep coming back. The idea of Nerlens Noel isn't a bad idea, but the functionality of Nerlens Noel has not been great throughout the last like 4 or 5 years. Like, he really has struggled to figure himself out and to become a rotational NBA player that sticks. And that's why he's played for, I think this is his 7th team in 9 NBA seasons. So yeah, pretty surprising. And like Jim Thurkill brings up here in the chat, the depth is good. The Kings are deep at the 4 and the 5, and that's a good thing. And we still have no idea what's going to happen to Neemias Queta. I haven't heard anything updated. I know there were a couple of teams in Europe that were looking at him. I still think that there's potential for him to get a contract here. And if he accepts his qualifying offer, he would be the quote unquote 15th man on the roster right now, but with only like a $75,000 bonus as a guarantee from what I know. Yeah. So if they waive him, it would be very, very minimal. Like it wouldn't impact their salary cap at all. And that's what I was saying when we got cut off, is that the Kings, as of right now, like they're already over the cap. Any money that they spend now is going to be for quote unquote veteran minimum players. So, and that, someone brings up Christian Wood here in the chat. Like, I don't think Christian Wood or Kelly Oubre are signing for league minimum deals still. I think there's still money out there somewhere hiding under a rock for each of these players, even if it's for a team to take on a player that they could, play from some solid minutes in the first half of the season and then trade them at the deadline for a 2nd round pick or a late 1st round pick if they've played really well and have proven that, they might be a valuable chip to someone else. So
curious. Yeah. Not the most, I wouldn't say I'm the most educated on the landscape of the 2 ways, the typical restricted free agency timing and landscape of 2 ways. But is it telling that Nemi doesn't have an offer from another team at this point?
No, because I don't think that, any offer that he would get at this point would be for a roster position. And the Kings would have an opportunity to match. So, yeah, I think there are other teams out there that could look at him for a 2-way contract, but that's not something he wants. Yeah, at least that's what it appears. He would like a main roster position, which I think if a team really wants to push the Kings and force their hand, they sign him to just a roster spot, like an offer sheet for a roster spot, and then make the Kings decide what they're going to do. And that hasn't happened, but I think we're also at the very end of free agency where like some things are still moving, some things are still happening. And then we have all these trades that are potentially happening. And so teams have to keep some roster spaces open and some flexibility open. But yeah, it's a little bit complex still. I wouldn't think
that's well said. It's just tough because everything in the market has really died down. Part of that could be these James Harden, Dame Lillard potential trades just hanging over the league. A lot of it is just the dog days of summer. You're in August. The closer you get to training camp, I think that's when things will kind of not pick up, but you'll start to see more and more transactions and people start to fill out training camp rosters and invites and things of that nature. So I don't have any way to gauge right now interest with for Neemias Queta with other NBA teams. As James mentioned, certainly there's possibilities that exist in the overseas markets, but I don't right now. I haven't done my homework on that and checked in with people about interest in Neemias Queta for other teams at the moment.
Yeah, and Brenden too. I'll bring up this Dominic Barlow, who to me I thought was one of the best players in Summer League, both at the Cal Classic and in Vegas. Yeah. I thought he was super impressive. He just signed a 2-way contract with the Spurs, like in the last couple of days, and he did not get a main roster position. If I were a team like the Kings, I would have thought long and hard about giving him a roster position and just going like, well, why not? He's 20 years old. It's like getting another 1st round pick. even if it's a late first round pick. So, I still think that there are still mechanisms in place here. There are still things happening. Neemias Queta is not the only one. And I think other teams they're still trying to figure out how to use the three two ways. Like there's a lot of things that this is new. It's all new. And so you want to make sure that you're maximizing your roster, but you also might want to keep training camp, a roster spot or a two-way spot open for training camp, because that way you could have a healthy competition for positions and maybe reward someone for being really good with a two-way contract. So lots to mull over still. And we talked about this last time, but basically you're allowed during the offseason up to 21 roster spots now. It used to be 20. They bumped it up to 21 when they added another two-way contract. So during the offseason, the makeup of those 21 players can be just about anything, but it's your standard roster, your two ways, and then any exhibit 10s or training camp invites that you do, you can have up to 21 players. So the Kings still have time to sort of figure out what they're going to do. And they could also make a trade. And even right now they could, OKC has too many players under contract for this coming season. They might be willing to trade someone that you're interested in for a second round pick or something and go out and get a player and bring him in, as opposed to just a signing or something. Lots to still work through. I mentioned this earlier, but training camp for teams that are playing internationally, you can open up training camp on September 29th. For all other teams, October 2nd is a day that players report, and October 3rd is the start of training camp. Sean, I'll start with you. That's weird. That's a week late.
Well, in games, when's the first exhibition game? 3 days later?
Yeah, but those
not for every team, games. Of course. Yeah.
No, that's going to be for the international play teams, right, that started days earlier. Your rosters are set on October 23rd, and the start of the regular season is October 24th. I thought that last season, start of this regular season was October 19th and 20th, but training camp getting moved up a little bit. I mean, moved back a little bit. Is that surprising?
Yeah, I think a little bit, because typically you would have the last week of September, that first month, that last Monday in September be your media day, and every player will be in town by the second week of September, maybe maybe 2.5 weeks into September, and they'll be holding their own players run kind of fitness camp, scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, with trainers and stuff like that. But coaches will be away from that. So they always kind of ramp up training camp. That's always the good thing to see, is that build to training camp. So yeah, pushing it back another week makes it easier for me, because I had booked a little San Diego trip at the end of September. So that's
I too have a trip in late September. I have a trip planned right before the start of training camp, right before media day, and it buys me a few days as well to get off a plane and relax before the barrage starts.
I literally
booked, I guess.
Yeah, what? I literally booked my trip and was like, well, that's gonna be media day. That Tuesday will be the first day of training camp that the media gets to attend and all that. And then Wednesday I'm on a plane and I won't return for a few days. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, Brenden, so you're not going anywhere, or you are?
Well, now I feel left out, so I'll figure out where I'm going. It might be down the street, but I'll go somewhere those days.
I'll just take a walk.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Jim Thurkill asked, James, did I miss someone signing Ford? Jordan Ford has not signed anywhere that I've heard.
No. Sean, and he will. I'll tell you this. He will be in training camp with the Kings.
All right.
And
there it is.
There may be. Well, I said it the last podcast as well. But there. Who knows? He could. Maybe he'll have the two-way figured out by then. Maybe he'll have a roster slot or just a training camp invite. But at worst case scenario, you will see Jordan Ford in the Kings training camp.
If your last name was Ford, would you be more or less likely to drive a Ford?
You moron. That's what
like asking
I've thought
me
about this recently.
That's like asking me if I would be more or less likely to eat ham.
You're a turkey guy, right?
Yeah, more of a turkey than I don't.
That's hilarious. I will say this: I would go to my agent and I would say, "Hey, agent, go get me a deal. I'm it's like Fox with Fox, I guess. I don't know. Anyone that has a name like that, you go find if you go get a car dealership sponsorship and do some commercials.
Yeah. Okay.
Folsom Lake Ford, Jordan Ford, played at Folsom High School. These things write themselves. I just did the work for him.
He literally is the Folsom Lake Ford.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't even think about that. He is the Folsom Lake Ford.
Someone in the chat asked if Frankie Ferrari drives a Ferrari, and I'm going to guess no.
I'm going to guess.
Why is that, Brenden?
He doesn't seem like that type of guy. The mustache with the Ferrari, I don't know.
Oh, man. I mean, I think he probably has aspirations to drive a Ferrari. That's a good question. Right. Yeah.
Can I fit in a Ferrari? I don't think I could fit in a Ferrari.
I don't know.
I've been in a Lamborghini. Which one's tighter?
I haven't been in either.
I mean, my Ferrari's a little tighter than my Lambo.
Yeah. There's a couple of Lambos.
One of them
here
is smaller than the other. I'm sure someone in the chat knows. But
yeah, that's funny.
Okay, since we're on cars, by the way, what in the holy hell is happening in Sacramento with all this traffic? I know, look, James, you live up the hill. I get it. These are not real world problems for you, but I'm sure people in the chat have seen what's going on with Highway 50 lately. Just Jesus Christ, man. Especially the interchange between 99 and 5. It's getting dumber and it won't end. It never ends.
That's why one of the many reasons I live away from the city.
Oh, it's so bad, dude.
I have to drive past the same spot I got hit all the time, and I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
PTSD?
Just a little
PTSD. How's the new car, Brenden?
It's good. Fuel efficient and not ugly. That's all I want to check.
That was your big thing.
Yep.
Okay, let's get on. Brenden, you mentioned Jordi Fernandez coaching the Canadian national team. Mike Brown is also doing some stuff. Sean, what do you got for us on Mike Brown?
Yeah, I got to spend a morning with him today virtually over Zoom. He's in South Africa with a Basketball Without Borders. It's him, our old pal Dave Yeager's down there, JB Bickerstaff, Darvin Ham, Dwayne Casey, a lot of coaches and executives with several teams, and they're with a lot of players down there like Bam Adebayo, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Kuminga, and they're doing, they bring in the top like 85 boy and girl athletes for the entire continent of Africa. And they have camps with this because they've got the NBA Africa League, and they're really growing the game over there. It's a lot of fun. Anytime Mike Brown, I mean, obviously we know his tie to the Nigerian national team. He's not doing that right now. We could see him maybe jump back into that at some point, but to see him do the Basketball Without Borders and spread a lot of goodwill. He's also working with a lot of local coaches. It's really impressive. I mean, you think about this. 2001 is when they started that Basketball Without Borders to globalize the game. And 19 of those years, Africa has been a part of it. And it's grown tremendously. You just look around the league. I mean, you see so many international influences. Africa's well represented, and you've got some coming down the pike as well, and coaching as well. I mean, I think Mike, I was talking to him today. We'll be able to share that conversation at some point. I think in the next podcast, we'll kind of dive into some of the things he's seen that involves the Kings. But for the first part of this conversation that I had with him, it was all about Basketball Without Borders and his involvement. And it's cool to see him also. You'll probably see one of these coaches that has been helping out the coaches clinic to help, not only grow the game with these players, but some of the local coaches in Johannesburg in South Africa. And you might see one of those coaches join him as a guest during training camp. So just really, really cool stuff that they're doing over there.
Yeah, Mike Brown is really good about that. We had that a couple of times, right? Didn't all the coaches from Spain came over at one point, and they hosted a bunch of coaches that were just like hanging out in practice and getting to learn from professional coaching staff. Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good way to grow the game. And Mike is such an ambassador. I think it's perfect that he's part of this. I haven't checked in with Jaeger. Is he anywhere?
He's not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But he is in South Africa. So he's taking part of this program, and we'll see if he ends up anywhere. Maybe takes a year off. We'll see. But the coaching carousel is ever changing, and you'll see eventually some additions to his staff. I know if you looked at summer league, you saw Jawad Williams, the North Carolina player. He'll be around, just there'll be opportunities and holes that you'll see some new faces that are in place for the coming season.
Okay. Cool. What else do we have to cover? There was a discussion that I know Sam Amick has talked about this a bunch lately. I think we're getting closer to a point where we have to start looking at player salaries in a little bit different light. So like when I first started covering the Sacramento Kings in 2010 and 2011, I think the salary cap was 58 million one year and 59 million the next. Right. So when you signed a mid-level exception player, which was like a 5-year, you could do like a 5-year, $25 million deal, or a 4-year, $20 million deal. It's something like what Sharif Abdul-Rahim got. Right. So but that's 10% of the salary cap. And so I think as the cap has gone up and up and up, we kind of have lost sight of what exactly the salary cap, like percentages of the cap, actually mean. And it's something that I think it's a different way to look at things. And I know Harrison Barnes this year, he signed a contract at 17, 18, and 19 million for the next 3 years. His contract last year was $18.35 million. And that was 14.8% of the cap. His number this year is 17 million, and it's 12.5% of the cap. I have him at like 18% of the cap next year, and right around 19% of the cap the following year. It is, not percent of the cap, 12.7% the following year, and like 12.8% the next year. Is there a way that like we have to start looking at these deals in a different light? Because if the salary cap jumps, I think next season is supposed to be 142 or 144 million, but there's a possibility it jumps up like it did this year, 2 million, and it could go up to like 146, 148 million bucks. All of a sudden, Harrison Barnes's contract looks like less and less of a percentage of your overall cap. And I think that's probably a solid thing to have happen. You got a bunch of guys on this team that are around 5 or 6% of the cap. And then you got 2 guys that are, Fox is, I think he's at like 30% of the cap, or 25% of the cap. And then Domas this year is at 22%, but next year it jumps up to like 30% of the cap. Is it weird that we're going to have to start looking at players in this type of conversation where we're breaking them down by like their piece of the pie?
I think that's kind of always been the conversation. It's just different wording in a way. And I do think that it's easier, simpler wording, and it's beneficial to use percentage of the cap. And it's just something I'm going to have to get more accustomed to. But like you talk about, like Karl Anthony's extension is about to be 52 million, not this year, but next. Cool. And then that keeps climbing and eventually up to 64. And it's like, a number is insane, but like, what's De'Aaron's number going to look like? It's like, I think these numbers are going to become more and more common, to your point, James. And I do think it's beneficial to look at it from a percentage of the cap, because it just, it's a direct reference to or comparison to what years prior salary was when you have to adjust for the increase in salary cap. So I think these numbers start to sound ridiculous, but it's just the league making more money.
Yeah. Well, and I like to point out, you're seeing it in coaches now as well, so it's these numbers are staggering. To show a percentage point, sure, but it's still staggering, and you can still go back 10, 15, 20 years and the conversation each era, it's like, oh my God, this guy's going to make $20 million a year. That's a thing of the past. Magic Johnson's, what was it? The $20 million for 20-year contract. Just crazy. It's almost like the Bobby Bonilla contract. So the NBA, the best thing had ever going for it was guaranteed contracts. And now you've got a lot of partially guaranteeds, and it's becoming more and more like the NFL. And so I do look, yes, having it in proper perspective with the salary cap, sure. But the other way to look at it too is these are still staggering numbers. And at what point does your bubble kind of burst a little bit, right? Like, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but everything keeps escalating, and it will be interesting to see what it looks like 10 years from now. And obviously there's an influx of money. You're going to have a new television contract. It's going to get silly, more silly, I should say. But also I think it's like I've said it for the past few podcasts, like teams who compete and teams who are good, they're over the cap. Like we're talking aprons, and we're talking about all these luxury taxes and things like that.
Apron.
So even when you get it, like, to me, that's more staggering, where it's like, I'm not just willing to pay this guy $40 million a year, X player, whoever it is. I'm willing to pay this person that much money and then an additional 15 on top of it just to be a successful product that's competitive, that has aspirations of winning. And to me, I think that's where you're getting silly, because player salaries in professional sports, they're going to be high. They're going to be higher. You're going to see executives start to make much more. You're going to start to see people all throughout the landscape of NBA basketball start to make more. But when you're a team, it's just, if you're going to be a team that's going to be competitive and sustain success and be in the postseason, the majority of those teams are all teams that are over the cap.
Yeah. So Meg has a suggestion here. There's Seth Partnow has a book. Is it The Mid-Range Theory? That talks about this exact thing. And I think when I'm looking at the numbers, because I love numbers, it's just like, again, it's the way my brain works. But I think that the real value is to look at, like, a guy like Keegan Murray is making 6.18% of the cap this year, right? And so you look at that, and it shows you just the extreme value of high draft picks, and how, their first 4 years, you have so much control and they're worth so much, especially like if we're talking about Tyrese Halliburton versus Domantas Sabonis. So even if you look at Tyrese Halliburton at the 12th pick, I can tell you, like, Chris Duarte is at 3%. And what was he, the 11th pick? He's at 3% of the cap. And Davion Mitchell's at 3.7% of the cap. These are such small cap figures. But when you're building a roster, you have to think of things in this perspective. Like, you have to have a certain amount of young players, not just because you're trying to develop young talent, but because you need their locked in rookie scale contract that only eats. Again, look at the value that Keegan Murray, like, even in his rookie season, presents, right? He's making at that point like between 5 and 6% of the cap, but he's playing 30 minutes a night, like guys on your roster who are getting paid 12 or 27% of your cap. And so there's so much inherent value in having these players on much smaller contracts that you can control. And I'll point this out too. It's why I applaud the contract that they were able to get Sasha Vezenkov locked into, because you're looking at a 3-year deal that starts at like 4.7% of the cap, 4.9%, and 5.1% of the cap. I mean, having a guy in his prime and only paying him, 4 to 5% of the cap, that's amazing, especially as the cap goes up. And if there's television money that jumps in there, and his cap figure could go down to like 3 or 4% of the cap, and that means you still have 94% or 96% of the cap to go out and spend. And then on top of that, you can go above the cap to sign your own players. So I just think it's a really interesting conversation to have about how the league is starting to look at different um, at the cap differently, about player salaries differently, and you almost have to. I mean, that Jalen Brown contract, that's wild. Like with 5 years, $304 million, he's going to make
$300 million man.
Yeah, almost $70 million in the final year of his contract. And like, what do you do? Like, if he gets hurt and just isn't the same player, not hurt bad enough to retire, but hurt enough where he's not the same player, that's some scary propositions right there. That's a lot of money. So I don't know. I don't. Is there any of these things that are surprising you guys at all? Because I think the biggest thing for me is we're going to see it in baseball this summer with Ohtani. And I think Ohtani is going to break the bank. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see anything in professional sports like what we'll see for Ohtani this summer. I think he will approach $1 billion salary for 10 years, but like $1 billion or $1 billion.
And he's older too, right? I mean,
he's
even
29.
as a two-way player. No. Yeah, 29 years old.
Yeah, so you're going to get him through his prime, and then you'll probably have to pay for 3 to 4 years of bad year. But really, I don't know if you are, because he's still going to be a reasonable starter, and he's still going to hit a bunch of home runs. But like, I don't think we've seen anything like this, and I think this will be the thing that really like points out. We're seeing it, I think, right now with the Saudis buying professional players in soccer.
How about feeling good enough to turn down upwards of $700 million for a year?
Oh, the Mbappe deal?
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was more complex than that. It was like they were offering him $300 million, but another like $400 million endorsements, and then there was another $300 million to purchase his contract as a transfer fee from PSG, which PSG is like, heck yeah, we'll do this in a heartbeat, because they're going to lose him for nothing next summer if they don't get him locked in. And so like a lot of that made sense for everybody, except for a 23, 24-year-old dude who knows that going to play in Saudi Arabia probably isn't the best idea for his career development at this particular time. I don't know, but it's happening.
Pocketbook it is.
Yeah.
Good
well,
Lord.
that, and I think Messi, we don't know the exact numbers on Messi's deal going to what is it? Inter Miami or whatever they're calling it down there.
Hey,
but
I'm a huge Inter Miami fan.
Yeah.
Better get it right, James.
But he gets not involved.
Yeah, he gets a percentage of the MLS subscriptions through Apple. So I'm paying part of Messi's contract now, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's wild. I mean, how he's gonna make so much money. And I think Ronaldo was the first guy to take a bunch of money, and then there's been a lot of good players. I think it's actually kind of good for the EPL. I don't know how we got on this subject fully, but like the EPL, I think it's good for like European soccer, because there are a lot of players who have been hanging on for way too long, and those are the players who are getting bought out and brought in, and it's allowing a new group of younger players. Because their system is not very well. I mean, it's refined, but there are a lot of players who get left out of in the cold and never make it up to the big clubs. So anyway, I think it's pretty interesting. We talked about this last episode, but I want to bring it up one more time because we've had some developments with it, and we'll make it the business of basketball. So the business of basketball.
There you go.
The Damian Lillard situation is just awkward and weird and uncomfortable. And, we have a player who has not only requested a trade, made it well known that he does not want to be in with Portland Trailblazers anymore. But on top of that, his management has made it very clear, and Aaron Goodwin, that he does not want to play for any other team other than the Miami Heat. And we're talking about a player who has a long-term contract. The final year of his contract is a player option at, I think it's $63 million, like 4 years from now when he's like 37. So you're going to have to give up something for him. But I think the bigger conversation is players dictating where they're going to go and where they're not. And the NBA having to step in and saying, wait, this is not who we are and how we handle business. what are you guys' thoughts on the NBA putting out a memo about the Damian Lillard situation? And do you think this changes the way, do you think it changes where he'll end up at the end of the day?
I don't know. I mean, I posed it to us, or to you guys. Like we've certainly seen players say they want out, demand trades, kind of choose their way to go. And it's one of the things we were talking about. I don't know if it was last podcast or the one before that, but it's a lot of times the agencies are the ones that have to go and find these trades for the team. And I felt this one is one of those rare cases where you've got a player that means so much to the team he'd be leaving that you don't want a KG scenario, a Kevin Garnett scenario, where he can't like show his face in Minneapolis because of his hatred towards that ownership group or the previous ownership group before the new one has stepped in. But like it's a very toxic relationship that player has with the Timberwolves organization. And it's one that they're hopefully trying to, get beyond. But it's what I was alluding to with this situation. It's like, hey, Damian Lillard, you may like to go to the Heat, but if you're the Blazers, like what you're getting back is not even near a fair deal, one, but it's not even one that you would entertain. Like maybe entertain, like okay, I know what you're gonna say, because you said it last week too.
Okay.
Like it's a fine deal. It's an okay deal for what they can do, because yes, you're not going to get the likes of Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo or any of your basically top 4 players. But like if you're the Blazers, you should not have a gun to your head to have to only trade him to the Miami Heat. If you want to trade him to Utah and get a bigger package, if you want to, send him out to Charlotte for something, I mean, you should be able to trade him where you want. And again, you have guaranteed contracts, and these players aren't going to want to just sit out valuable years of their prime. And I don't think Damian Lillard would do that. But to see the memo out there, no, I don't think it's going to curb any other player from doing this later on. It just might not be. It might be done in a more buttoned up fashion and more behind the scenes than the way this one is played out with Lillard and the Blazers.
I mean, I agree with most of what Sean said. I do think the Miami package is decent. I think there's an aspect of, like, obviously Dame's phenomenal. But he is 32 in the contract. I think there's pros and cons to him being locked up long term. Obviously, you're glad to have that guy around for a while when you're trading for him. But, when you're talking about 2025, 26, and he's getting paid $58 million at 35, or player option the year after $63 million at 36, like, who's to say Dame looks the same? So I don't think the Miami package is horrible, but I do very much agree that it shouldn't be a situation where this is the only team that feels comfortable enough to, like, really offer anything up. Just from, like, the way that Dame preaches loyalty and going about his business the right way, like, I would imagine that he would show up if he got traded somewhere else. And I think there needs to be some competition in a bidding war of sorts. That's just the healthy way to go about this. I think that's the typical way that this works with stars. And again, Dame has every right to tell teams, I don't really want to be there, but there's difference between I'd prefer to not be there and I'm not going to show up. And I think the memo is just for clarity there, that it's the former and not the latter, is what at least the league is trying to portray to teams. And yeah, I think that other people do need to be a part of this conversation. And there's still a way to be respectful to your player and try to avoid the Kevin Garnett situation. I would think that Dame should understand a bit of, like, if you approach him, and I think we said this last time with, hey, we don't love the Miami offer, but we like these two a lot. Take your pick. I think there's still a way to remain respectful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do want to respect the player that you have and what he's meant to your franchise, but at the same time, this is a business, and you've paid Damian Lillard a lot of money. I think coming in before this season, he's made $235 million in the NBA. $235 million, and all of that is from the Portland Trailblazers. And going forward, it's like an additional $200 and something million that he's owed, when he's really not in his prime. He's at the back end of his prime. And 3 years from now, when you owe him $60 million, it's gonna hurt. It's not going to be an easy one to swallow. I mean, it doesn't matter how much the salary cap goes up. We just talked about percentages. I mean, that's still going to be a gigantic chunk of your salary, like 18%, 17%, whatever it might be at that time. Just depends on where the cap's at. So I think that there's a way to be respectful, but I also think that you owe a franchise something. It's a two-way street. And like, we got in this discussion yesterday with on D'Lo and Casey. Like, it's not like this is the first time we've had issues like this where a player or an agent doesn't want someone to go there. I brought up the DeMarcus Cousins situation when DeMarcus was getting an extension with the Sacramento Kings, and then all of a sudden he wasn't getting an extension. He was being traded to the New Orleans Pelicans, and we had that weird moment where Vlade Divac says, I had a better deal 2 days ago. And everyone in the room was like, oh, Jesus, Vlade, why do you have to say this stuff? And then what he meant and what the better deal he had 2 days previously was very specific. It was with the New Orleans Pelicans. It was just he was going to get 2 first-round picks and Buddy Hield. And did they get Tyreke Evans? And I keep forgetting what the whole
Tyreke Evans and Langston Galloway.
Okay. They were supposed to get 2 first-round picks, which was one New Orleans pick that year and then the pick 2 years later. But when DeMarcus's agent found out that he was going to be traded to the Pelicans, he went to the Pelicans and said, like, you're not trading for him. We have a deal in place to sign an extension, and he's getting his extension. And we won't sign an extension with you if you're going to make this trade. And so the Kings and Pelicans had to go back and renegotiate. And in that transaction, the second first-round pick became a early second-round pick in 2017. So the Kings, in that trade, they ended up getting Buddy Hield, the 2017 number 10 overall pick, which they traded for 15 and 20, which became Justin Jackson and Harry Giles, but also an early second-round pick, which became Frank Mason. And that's what the deal basically for DeMarcus Cousins. You got Buddy Hield and then these other 3 players, and then the contracts to match to get DeMarcus done. But again, the agent did actually cost the Kings something of value, which ended up being a very, very good pick 2 years later. But yeah, I mean, it's been this way since the beginning of time. It feels like in the NBA, where agents have a huge say about where their players go. Do you think that this is going to change anything?
No. I mean, I don't. I really don't. And I think do I think he's going to go to Miami? I still have a little bit of doubt there. I think ultimately, yeah, probably. But like, I always kind of think back, and I know this is not really all that fair because it's apples and oranges in terms of the CBA and contracts and what players play for. But Mitch Richmond comes to mind. Like that he needed a pay increase. He was underpaid for so long. He wasn't going to get it in Sacramento. It run its course. And you had a player that was probably going to hold out and just was an absolute malcontent in his final year. And it was awful to see because he's the face of your franchise. And yes, it worked out great because you got Chris Webber, and it not only revitalized, but it took your franchise farther than it's ever been. So, great. But that came at a great cost in a sense, because it got ugly for a long time with Mitch Richmond and the Kings. So certainly you don't want that to play out in the public. Players weren't paid what they are now. You mentioned, James, over $200 million for a guy like Lillard and what he's meant for that organization. So Lillard, who is, in my opinion, a very, very good human being, even if you have shrewd businessmen around you and people who represent you, that's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. But you almost want to reward Lillard for what he's meant to your franchise. It hasn't worked. You shouldn't want to have to pay a player that much money to be a team that's really going through a rebuild, or maybe a small rebuild in a way. I mean, you've got a new face of your franchise with Scoot Henderson, and you should want to go that direction. But at the same time, you need to do what's best. And I would push back slightly there. I don't think the player, I don't think they should be loyal to the organization. I mean, you got to do what's best for you. You have a finite amount of time to strike while the iron's hot and make a career out of a few years. Certainly, he's made generational wealth. I'm not going to mistake that, but I'm saying in terms of what other players might do and might be in similar or less fortunate situations of what Lillard's in. And especially considering that there's no loyalty from an organization. They'll tell you one thing, spit in your face, and trade you the next day for nothing. Just look at what happened to Jordan Poole. Literally a day after they're saying he's going to be with us a long, long time, he ends up in Washington, which I think is going to be really good for him. There's no loyalty in this. And DeMarcus Cousins was promised an extension by Sacramento. He never got it. So, it's a business. It's a business at the end of the day. That old, I have friends and we say it all the time. It's not show friends, it's show business. And that's exactly what it is. Business is first and foremost. And you have to be selfish in this case, no matter if you're a player, a coach, an executive, a broadcaster, you have to be selfish. You don't owe them anything.
Yeah. And I think like what makes this so unique, obviously, is that this is an NBA top 75 guy that's got 4 years left on his deal. And he's not saying, I want to go to like these are my preferred destinations. It's this one team, like
that's the problem.
Right. KD just had a couple years on his deal, but he had a couple places that he liked. Right. And so I think that's where maybe this is a little too much of like, I don't know that the player should be able to say like, I want to go to this place and absolutely make that happen. Like I think, again, push for it. I understand trying to finagle and make that happen, but that's where this complication is, right? Is how long of a contract this is. And it's one place that he's picking. Just pick a couple.
Well, that, and like Brennan, I think the other issue, and this isn't like a disrespect on Aaron Goodwin, because I like Aaron Goodwin. Like I've known Aaron Goodwin for a long time. Sean's known Aaron for a good time. He's a good
tremendous
guy.
Yeah.
He has his client's best interest at heart. But in this specific situation, he broke the rules. Like there are specific rules about what you can and cannot do in this situation. And he's broken the rules. And so I think that's where the NBA is at this point. Like, look, like there's enough out there. We know enough that you have said this and this and this to specific teams about him not wanting to go there to really have a case to show you. Like if you can tell us that you're saying one thing, but everyone else is telling us you're saying something different. And again, like my first when we first met Aaron Goodwin in Sacramento, at least for me, was when Terence Williams came to town. And Sean, you remember this? Terence Williams signed a pair of 10-day contracts.
Yeah.
And Aaron stayed in Sacramento the entirety of the 20 days to make sure that his client stayed in line and that he was representing his client the best way possible and that he was taken care of.
I mean, he also, he represented before that, like, Sharif Abdur-Rahim and Chris Webber at different points. So, I mean, he's been around forever. He used to be the shoe guy. For people who don't know, he's LeBron's first agent. He signed a really unique deal with LeBron that got him, and I want to say it's like $25 million of his first Nike deal. And the deal was, I'll never take another penny from you the rest of the way forward, even if your NBA contracts, things of that nature. It's basically front loading a ton of money up front for this agent who is going to set you on your way. And at that point, almost 10 years later, I think that's when, the likes of Maverick Carter is ready to go and really kind of step into his own as an agent and running things. And they have their whole empire. And Aaron Goodwin used to be the guy that would go get the shoe deal. Jason Kidd, Gary Payton, he would go and get you your shoe deal, and didn't have to be just Nike, could be any of them, and he'd make a ton of money off of it. And he's very, very good at what he does. And here's the point, Brendan, you said with the whole, maybe the mistake of saying, I only want one destination. I agree with you a little bit. And if I'm Portland, I'm saying, hey, if you want to go there, you have to bring a deal go find the deal, because we don't see the deal that we can get that works. And you put the ball in Goodwin's camp to be able to go and facilitate a deal. Maybe they've thought that they've done that for Portland. who knows? That doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, if he ends up in Portland or if he ends up in Miami and it works, even with a league memo, Aaron Goodwin did what was his best interest for his client, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. Interesting stuff. Okay, do you guys have any questions? If you have any questions, send them in to us really quick. If we can rattle through, we will. But we'll start to wind down here. We've been going for an hour and 15. If you're still watching here on the YouTube channel and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. We are live today.
How many we got? 53.
53. Come on now.
Oh.
So also subscribe to the channel. We just broke 3,000 subscribers. We're plugging away. We're building a media empire here at the King's Beat.
We are. No one told me.
We're not building a media empire. Let's see. Cameron, how much longer until the NBA schedule is released? It's going to be a little while. It's usually, I want to say we won't know until September. Typically, I think that's when they do it.
There's one that comes out in end of July, maybe right around this time that goes through the teams, and it's almost like a rough draft, but much of what's on that rough draft ends up being the actual schedule.
Yeah.
But I think having the play-in dynamic, the play-in tournament, or not play-in tournament, excuse me, in-season tournament might add a little wrinkle to that might delay the schedule. NBA TV will do similar to what ESPN and NFL Network does with their schedule once it comes out. So it'll be soon. I just don't know if there's a set date for it yet.
The in-season tournament is December 7th through 9th. But I think Sean is correct in assuming that the schedule will come out later than usual because it's
yeah. And I meant set date for like the release of the schedule, but yeah.
I think
it'll.
Someone's asked that they heard that Metu has been the player rep. Is that true? Yeah. Chimezie Metu is a player rep. The Kings will get a different player that will step into that role. And that just means that information from the league or from the Players Association gets disseminated to the reps, and then the reps have conversations within the locker room with the team. That's all.
Can Harrison Barnes be part of the Players Association and be the rep?
So what it is, like, he's part of the executive board as like treasurer, I think it is, or whatever it is. But as being part of the executive board, the Kings are in their locker room is in a good situation because you have basically two people representing at the table. So if you're a player who really doesn't understand something about what your union is and the Players Association, or need to navigate it, you've got two really big resources right there.
Yeah. Okay. So, Brandon, what do you think of this question? Charlie Boltman, are the Kings going to pick up Davion's option for next season?
Charlie looks very unhappy in that picture. He needs to put a smile on that face, man.
Hey, I don't know what happy looks like for Charlie. Okay.
That's true.
That could be happy Charlie right there.
Okay.
Oh.
I think that, I mean, it'd be shocking if they didn't, right? I think the more complicated question is like, what would an eventual extension look like? And as you start to approach that, do you start to consider, maybe we don't want to be the ones to pay him that? Speaking from Sacramento's perspective. So I think, yes, I think it's a pretty obvious yes for the player option or the team option next season. But you start to reach an interesting conversation with restricted free agency when it comes to Davion. Still a little ways out.
Sean?
You pick up the option and you have a lot of time and evaluation left before getting into the discussions of extension, but you want to make sure he's as happy as possible and keep everything on the up and up, but he'll pick up that option.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with both of these guys. And just to further that, like, he's an asset no matter what. He's still the number 9 pick in the draft, even though he may not have the same value that he had when you drafted him. But he also, his qualifying offer. So his salary for next season is a team option at $6.45 million. And then the qualifying offer the following year is $8.7 million. And that's a little bit high, but again, we're talking about as the salary cap goes up and up and up, that might not be that bad. So I think that at worst case scenario, he's your backup point guard for the next couple of years. You also have the option to trade him. You also have the option to get him into like you can use a sign-in trade, or you can wait and let someone else set the market value for him into not next summer, but the summer after. And you can kind of go from there. So I think, yes, I don't think there's any question. Securing the beam. Anything Duarte can do to get consistent minutes.
Play defense and be able to defend up. I think guarding threes would be pretty big. And I think, that was something that was talked about for Duarte as a prospect coming out of Oregon. It was that he played both sides of the ball. I still have to see more from him defensively, but obviously wing defense is something that Sacramento needs. And I'll throw the shooting in there as well, that he's obviously confident in his 3-point shot, but a little up and down when you look at last year's numbers compared to rookie year. But defense is what stands out to me right away.
Yeah, his rookie numbers defensively were crazy. He held his opponents to like 8.4% below their average from three and like 7% below their average outside of 15 feet. So he's a very, very good perimeter defender. I'd also add the other thing that he can do to keep himself, like to get consistent minutes, is to stay healthy, because he did not do that last year. He had all kinds of issues, and that cost him. It kind of held him, he missed a lot of time, and he lost his place in the rotation because of that. Let's see. Okay. What is the most underrated free agent move that's happened so far in Sacramento or elsewhere, Charlotte? I'd say in Sacramento, it's probably Vezenkov.
It's got to be.
Yeah, it's the only. It's like
it's the only true addition,
or like
for free agency.
You think HB is good value, I guess, but I think Sasha's the one.
Yeah, I mean, Sasha, you're getting a dude who's entering his prime. He'll be 28 before the season. You get his 28, 29, and 30 year.
Was that the qualifier free agency for sure?
What do you mean?
The question was in free agency or in the off season, like just in.
I thought was it Kings or anywhere.
Like that does say free agency.
Oh, yeah. What do you think the most underrated free agency move that's happened so far?
Okay. Like Secure and the Beam said, like Eric Gordon to Suns. I don't know what you're talking about there, Secure and the Beam, but that's fine that you believe that that's part of the.
I mean, you can't really say underrated and Lakers in the same one, but like I think the Gabe Vincent signing's amazing.
Yeah. Especially his ability to shoot the three.
By the way, I hung out with Gabe for the second straight weekend. Last week he was in town for a private event that I can talk about later, but there was he had his basketball camp at his old stomping grounds of St. Mary's High School. And it was weird because like Lakers were very much well represented in terms of the colors of the camp gear and all the kids. And he's very much steering into the whole Lake Show brand and all it was fun. I mean, it was a fun camp. He's always such a inspiration for a lot of these young hoopers, no matter what age they are, to be around and see the likes of Max Strus kind of come out and help out at the camp, and Cody Demps, the former Stockton King. And here's a throwback, James. You remember Phil Ritchie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If people don't remember, he had a little bit of time with the Kings in summer league and training camp way back in the Chris Webber days. And he's from Galt High School. So it was kind of neat to see him. And yeah, just a fun event. That's one of the reasons why I was a little tardy in hopping on, was coming back from Stockton and dealing with the awful traffic in Sacramento at that Highway 50 interchange.
Gabe Vincent. Yeah. I think that might be one of the better sneaky pickups in the entire free agency. That's a good call.
And I think if you're taking it from like a overall standpoint, like I still can't believe the Grizzlies got Marcus Smart. Like to me, that is a really
the trade
solid pickup. Yeah. I know it's not a free agency thing, but yeah, but it's I think that's
I'm slightly I think it's a great pickup, but I'm not sure that they're any better. Like as a team, because losing
you're gonna
Jones,
have John Moran out for a while too. Yeah.
Yeah, and losing Dillon Brooks, I think he really is a Dillon Brooks replacement, and like both offensively and defensively, he brings a lot of the same stuff to the table. So
sorry,
go ahead, Mark.
I think Max Strus and Georges Niang are another good shout that went to Cleveland, a team that really needed a fifth guy in that starting lineup, and I think both those guys have some potential to be that.
Okay, no, that's another good one. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been an interesting summer where I think some teams got better. I don't think every team got better, but it's like this summer, I think this was about as and we're not done yet. I think the two big moves that can still happen. Of course, the Damian Lillard and the James Harden deal. I think this will be one of the more active and entertaining summers where things have gone all over the place. Meg asked about, do the Kings have any money left to spend? All they have is minimum salary, but that doesn't really mean anything, because when we get to this point of the season, of the offseason, most players who are still sitting out there are going to have to take minimum deals. We're getting close to that point. I think Christian Wood and Kelly Oubre are the two guys that you can kind of point to and say, there's a possibility that someone has some money hiding that might throw at them. But if not, we are to that point where, I could see a couple of teams like using those guys as money ball players. And I also think the Miami Heat are interested in at least Christian Wood, and they're waiting to see what happens with this whole other situation. Tyler asked, update on Sabonis's thumb. Sean,
no news is good news. no news
surgery.
Is good news. Yeah,
no surgery still. And so he's just been doing rehabilitation all summer. And I know Doug has been with him a lot this summer too, working out with him. So that's another thing.
And he and Duarte have sure linked up in the off-season workouts, which is nice to see.
That's the other thing that I think Duarte, his ability to play with Sabonis will help him get on the court. Like, they have chemistry and they were really good together before. But you know what? Like, let's be honest. Every player that plays with Domantas Sabonis shoots way better from three than they did any other time. I mean, we've seen it from Justin Holiday. We've seen it from everybody else. He makes everyone around him better, and it is what it is. Let's see. Do we have any final questions? You wish you could heart comments. Yeah, I don't know how to do any of that. Let's see. Are they going to change the court style for next year? I have no idea.
Probably.
Court.
You just changed the practice facility. You have some new uniforms that go beyond the city jersey. So yeah, I would imagine a different design on the court.
See, I missed the practice facility thing because I wasn't there that week.
Oh yeah. It just happened, I think, this past week where it had leaked out to social media. One of the I think current or former, I'll just shout him out, Jake Soriano, was back in the practice facility and showed what the mid court looked like, and it was more of the cursive Kings in black.
And it's ginormous.
It looked great. Yeah, it's huge. It looked great.
Ginormous. Sasha's going to be pulling from the logo, but it won't. It just sounds good, but it's not that deep. From the G on one end and the I on the other.
Right. That's funny. Meg said PJ Washington's still out there. Yeah, PJ Washington's still out there, but he's battling with Charlotte. He wants more money, and he's told them that he'll play for the qualifying offer, which isn't great. And then he becomes an unrestricted free agent next year. That may or may not happen. We still have to see what happens. And they haven't officially signed Bridges either. So they've got a lot going on there, especially with the ownership change. So I wouldn't doubt that some of those decisions are going to be made by people that aren't currently there, or maybe by people who are there, but that might have different roles or still trying to feel out who they are and what they are. I think everything is a holding pattern in Charlotte until all the ink has dried on their contracts. Wenyen Gabriel as a minimum value for Sacramento. What do you guys think on Wenyen? I love Wenyen. He's a good dude, but
I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like he might be able to get. I don't know. I felt like he could probably get something elsewhere, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there would be an opportunity for him necessarily here. So if I'm him, I'm probably looking at it as not really having the most minutes available. So I might steer my attention elsewhere, but got to do what's right for him. So we'll see.
Yeah, doesn't really do it for me. The shooting is not quite there for Wenyen Gabriel. I love how hard he plays and the length and agility he has for being that size, but I don't love the fit in Sac.
I really like Wenyen Gabriel, but I think what Sean's saying is that he might have more opportunity. I think anyone who's looking at a Kings roster spot at this point should feel that way. And that's why I don't think you're hearing murmurs of Christian Wood or Kelly Oubre, because like, what is the opportunity? Like, the Kings just traded for Chris Duarte and have visions of him actually filling a role potentially. There isn't a lot of minutes there barring injury. So if I were like one of those guys or both of those guys, I might even wait around and see if there's a big injury and then sign at a later point where you know you're going to get a major opportunity, or go to a bad team where they're promising you a role. So even if you have to take a minimum deal or less money, at least you're going to be able to put up big numbers, which is kind of what Oubre did last year, and it didn't work out for him. So maybe I should not, recommend anything for these two. Last one, could Terence, I assume Terence Davis, get a camp invite? Not to Sacramento. Not that I think. I don't know. I expect Terence Davis to get a camp invite, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Terence Davis is on a team for next season.
Yeah, there's still some teams. I think it could be a Celtics, a Nets, or maybe back to the Raptors. I know those were teams that were kind of interested. He's basically said goodbye. If anyone follows him on Instagram, he basically kind of said goodbye to one of his restaurants that he goes to in the area. So yeah, I think he knows that it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And he could provide something to one of these teams. He's a spark plug. We saw him have big games last year, and he's out there guarding Steph Curry in the playoffs. And, I'm not saying that's his strong suit, but he brings something to a team.
Yeah, I always think, like, Terence Davis is a solid NBA player. I think he should be on a roster next season, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be. Like, everyone has to remember that every single year, 60 players get drafted, except for this year where only 58 got drafted. Because two teams lost their second round picks, but there's an influx of players that come every year, and that means that 30 plus guaranteed contracts. That means that 30 players lose their jobs, and it's the reality. You got to fight to stay in the league.
I don't know. This person, is it Verson P, had an interesting question there, because I don't think the Kings would finish last in the Pacific Division. I guess ESPN has said so. That was part of the question. But I'm just curious from you two, who would you expect to finish last in the division?
Because
I kind of think it's the Warriors.
Yeah, maybe the Clippers.
Like, I don't know. Like, what if the Clippers are healthy? I know, because it hasn't happened. It's never happened since they went out and got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So for them to have to do it again and, give it the attention it's due, like, that could be really good,
Keep thinking that. And it keeps not happening.
Right? I know, it doesn't happen.
I don't know. Go ahead, Brenden.
I'm interested to see what Phoenix is in the regular season. I think they're a threat in the playoffs, but and I like some of the minimum guys they got around their 3 stars, but if one of those guys isn't available for an extended stretch, or like they're kind of in and out of lineups, that roster could look pretty tough some nights in the regular season. So I don't know. It really could be any of these teams. It's a lame answer, but like, I don't think somebody picking the Kings is crazy.
No, I don't either.
To finish last?
Yeah.
In the division, not in the conference.
Yeah. The division, like,
They literally were 3-7 last year, the entire division.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold on anything that any of these other teams did. Just like I don't think the Kings had this like off the charts off season. They had a really solid off season, like and continuity. They're banking on continuity. They're banking on organic growth. Clearly, that's what they're banking on. So did they get better? I think they got better, but they didn't get better by like leaps and bounds. But I also think that they could win 50 something games. So, we'll get to predictions and stuff later in the summer, but yeah, I mean, we kind of have to like, I don't know. Let's not do it now, but yeah, I mean, I don't like Phoenix's depth at all. I don't like a lot of the depth from the Warriors either. I don't think that they have 6 or 7 guys and then it falls off very, very sharply. I don't like how we keep saying the Clippers could stay healthy and get there. I mean, like the reason why the Lakers were so bad at the start of last season, can we all agree a good percentage of it was that Russell Westbrook was the wrong player, and now he's on the Clippers, and we're just gonna act like that he's still not the wrong player. So
at least Paul George and Kawhi can shoot. Like I do think it's a different.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, the stats look good, but the wins and losses aren't great. And then I would say like the Lakers were bad last year. They were bad the whole season until Danny Ainge gave them all those players. They've re-signed some, and their depth looks better than it did before. But Anthony Davis could miss anywhere between 25 and 60 games. LeBron James is 40 something. Like there is going to be regression from their 2 stars no matter what. And I don't know that they did enough and added the right pieces to fully make up for all that. So I'm not sold the Lakers are any better than they were last regular season. The fact that they got to the Western Conference Finals, I think it speaks more to like what happened in the playoffs than anything else. And I honestly think that it's very possible that somehow the Kings got past the Warriors, that they would have also made it to the Western Conference Finals and got past the Lakers. Very possible. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a coin flip, right? Like what's going to happen. And I think I do bank on continuity and organic growth and getting better, having the same coaching staff for 2 years, and defense will be better. Offense has better pieces, more complete team than it was a year before. Still has holes, but I think it's one of the better quality of depth and like depth overall teams that we've seen.
And don't worry about ESPN's power rankings. Like, who gives a shit? Like, seriously, it's not going to make you sleep better. It's not going to make you sleep any better. It's a power ranking. It's literally somebody who's looking at your offseason and saying, you know what, I like their offseason better. That's all it means. Look at where ESPN had the Kings ranked last year.
That's what I would do.
3rd in the West. That's all you got to worry about.
They finished 1st in the Pacific, so I'm going to guarantee that they had the Kings last in the Pacific last year as well. And this year they did nothing except for win 48 games and come in 3rd in the West and 1st in the Pacific. So, yeah. Okay. Do we have any final thoughts?
Meg did an edit early in this pod and sent it to Sean and I of our faces on a Barbie doll.
Oh,
and I just wanted to share.
Which one of us is?
Sorry to the audio side, but
this
is a phenomenal edit by Meg.
Wow. Nobody puts Sean and Brenden in a box.
I guess I need to look at my mentions, huh?
Oh no, that's awesome.
That's all I got.
Sean, do we have any final thoughts?
Let's see. I ranted about traffic. The weather's been phenomenal. We haven't gone up to 110 degrees. No, this has been great.
Phenomenal.
Don't you like it? Stop it. Like upper 90s. You top out at 100.
Phenomenal.
I went out to the fair and saw Ashanti. That was great. Almost went out and saw Gin Blossoms the other night, but I couldn't gather anybody to go with me. which was I wasn't going to show up on myself, but no one knows who Gin Blossoms are unless you turn on the radio and you go, oh, I know that song. And I go, yeah, it's Gin Blossoms. Not that I'm the biggest fan of them, but
okay.
That for a free concert, I'd have done that. Fair was kind of cool. I hadn't been there in a little while. Get out. And if you do the fair, just takes one trip. Go at night. It's kind of cool. I like it better at night. Definitely gonna watch the fights tonight. I got Dustin Poirier taking down Dustin Poirier over Justin Gaethje.
And that's
probably it. And it's pay-per-view, yeah. And I think and you got the boxing fight too. So you got I always bet on Terence Crawford, I guess. So do that.
Okay. I'm not watching any boxing. Brennan, any more final thoughts?
Not really. There's fun albums that came out yesterday. I've been having fun with new music. Travis and Post Malone came out yesterday or day before now. Lots of new music coming out recently, so that's fun. I am since our Vegas trip, Sean, and being at that country bar for that one night has me. I've been listening to a lot of country music since.
So that was
my country music.
That was an absolute mind f to know that. As I censor myself finally, to see that Brendan, we stumble into a casino version of a country bar, and I'll leave for reasons. We'll leave that for reasons unknown. That doesn't. The reason we were there doesn't matter. It was just a place to hang out for a moment, and to see him like have a country catalog in his head, much like me, just rattling off movies. Like I was blown away. Like we finally know Brendan's like where his core knowledge comes from. It's all he can rattle off country songs like that, man.
It's not, it's not just country though. I will say it's not even.
I can't. I hate it. I can't handle it.
I like poppy country. Give me like Kelsey Ballerini and
I can't stop listening to Morgan Wallen.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not gonna lie.
I didn't like what he did, so I hold it against not listening to him. Anyone going to Taylor Swift those 2 days? She created an earthquake in Santa Clara.
Those concerts look amazing.
Dude, she goes, I'm not the biggest Taylor fan, but I'm going to say this. She goes 3.5 hours. Haim opened for with Gracie Abrams. Gracie Abrams, the daughter of J.J. Abrams. Haim is incredible by themselves. I don't know if anyone is into them, but Taylor goes 3.5 hours, 40 songs. And each set list is different. Everyone, she does all her main thing, but she's going to sprinkle in that's pretty incredible. You don't see a lot of artists do that, and because most of the artists you go see, you have the same set list top to bottom in every single city. So, good for her. That's why people go see her.
That's right. Someone says I should take the guys out on the boat. You guys should come out on the boat this week. We should go out this week.
I wish.
You guys come up.
I'm going to be out in the street, so say hi to me. If you
any day this week, you guys come on up, hang out on the boat.
Do Canadians say oot and a boot? If you're saying out and about?
What?
By the way, Brendan, on Utopia, my favorite, I've listened to it all the way through once. My favorite song so far, favorite track would be Modern Jam.
Okay.
I love that.
Mine is either I Know or My Eyes. I think that's the right name.
Say Meltdown.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. We've talked music enough. My final thoughts.
Here we go. As he looks out to his window. He looks out the window.
I'm not doing it. Number one, I'm glad LeBron James, that Bronny is okay. But in saying that he's okay, I don't like saying that because 19-year-old should not, especially a 19-year-old who's been blessed to have incredible chefs and personal trainers since the time he's like 4 years old. They shouldn't have cardiac arrest during a practice. And so I hope they figure out what is going on there. But anyone who, talks about him like going out to dinner and being at a piano bar and playing the piano or whatever what happened last night, that's fine and all. But I hope they figure out what exactly happened here, because that's scary stuff. And I don't need any of that stuff ever happening. The Reggie Lewis stuff, the Hank Gather stuff, to live through those things was horrible. And I would hate to. LeBron James is one thing that we do know. He's a good family dude and he's a good dad. He spends a lot of time with his boys. And I really do hope that they figure out what's going on there. That is super scary stuff. Again, I've seen some gruesome injuries coaching youth soccer and stuff. And, you just feel for the parents. But something like that is a whole nother level where you're like, that's not great. So outside of that, we're not going to call Vax injured. Seriously, Primus 7-Eleven. Just like, don't be a dipshit. Like, seriously.
And also, if you've seen the Real Sports piece about having those, whatever, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's essentially like a defibrillator at your gym, at your place. Like, that needs to happen more. They need to have more of those available, and people need, and train, like, that's what saved them. That's what saves people. And the reason some of these people don't survive is because they can't locate the device. Real Sports did a phenomenal piece on it, and just how easily these things can be made available. So
I used to sell sporting equipment, and like Lincoln Hills, all the old softball guys used to come in and buy their softball bats from me all the time, and all of them have the same story. They got a new defibrillator for opening day. They have, like, opening day, there's a huge deal. They have this amazing event. The first inning, the pitcher goes down, has a heart attack. They bring out their brand new defibrillator that they just got for opening day and save the dude on opening day. So yeah, it would be great to have a lot more of those things.
AED defibrillator.
Yeah, AED like defibrillator. Get these things out there and all that stuff. So, all right, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. We are having a happy hour on Thursday. Make sure that you're a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat to get an invite to the happy hour for Thursday. We'll announce a guest here in the next 2 days. It should be fun. And I don't know. I think that's about it. Stay safe out there. Avoid the heat. And give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're still watching here on YouTube. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you soon.